In this video, I'm going to show you how to give students feedback on a rubric without making. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a rubric to give students feedback without making it look like you're giving students feedback using a rubric, because sometimes it can be hard to read the grids in a rubric for students, and long form communication is something that they might read more readily. So to do this, I'm using a product called TextExpander. It's available for Windows and Mac. It's not free, but they have discounted prices for academics. The way that it does this is it's a program that simply takes something that you type and replaces it with something else, but it can do pretty sophisticated things. So the way that it works is that you add these things called snippets. And the way a snippet works is that you have an abbreviation. This is what you type. And then you have the text, what it types here. So if I type semicolon be good with TextExpander running, then it makes a pleasant sound and replaces it with all of this text, which could be useful if I'm making lots of comments on good discussion posts. But what we want to do is something a little bit more complicated. We want to use a rubric. And I've got an example of one here called the broad model rubric, which is a rubric we use in interdisciplinary studies. And as you can see, this one's a little bit more complicated, but almost anybody can do this. It's really not hard once you figure out the basics. So I'm saying that when I type semicolon BMR, it replaces it with all this text, but it's going to give me some options. It's going to give me a blank to put in points with a default value that I've defined here. And it's going to give me a pop-up for the different criteria or levels in the rubric. I'll show you how that works. So if I type in semicolon BMR, it comes up with this. So I can type in that the student got 4 points and they had some problems with one of the things. Maybe they did very well on this one, so I can keep to the default. Maybe they did pretty poorly here, and I can say you had problems narrowing your disciplines, and so on and so forth. And I can just make these a little bit more complicated with varying points. And I even left myself a place to put in specific comments here. So when I press OK, it actually replaces it with all of this just by doing semicolon BMR and selecting things from the pop-ups. I'll show you a little bit about how that actually worked. So I'm going to go into make a new snippet. And I am going to say this one is going to appear when I do semicolon rubric. So I'm going to say you scored. And here's where I want my blank for the points. And then I'm going to say out of, say, 15 points on this criterion. And I'm going to use this tool up here to do a single line field. This one will be points 1. And I am going to have a default value of, let's say, 15. And then I'm going to make the width 2. Then I'm going to just do a simple pop-up for the next one. And let's say this was criterion 1. And I'm going to use that same tool to do a pop-up menu where I say criterion 1 is just going to be my title. You did a great job explaining concept and using an example to illustrate it. And maybe the second one is going to be You did a great job explaining the concept, but I think adding an example would make your explanation more useful. And then maybe I want to do a third one where I say, you gave a great example of the concept, but I could have used more explanation of the concept itself. And maybe this one is going to be the default one. So if I do this, and I've got my abbreviation there, and I hit create, then if TextExpander is running, I can just do semicolon rubric, and it asks me here. I'm going to say they got 10 points, and I'm going to choose the second one, and there you go. So this is using this program called TextExpander. You put in your rubrics, it doesn't take very long, and it might save you hours and might be a better way to communicate with your students.